I do want to dig into your story because it's fascinating to me. You were a Swiss Army knife at Cornell, and then you thought, hey, Ivy League degree. Let me just go and do anything I want. Talk college football. Let's just talk pigskin. And you're very, very good at it. Everybody knows that who's listening to this. How in the world did you get started in this field, parlaying that career with, a pretty atypical path? It's not like you were sitting there, doing the Kirk Herbstreit ESPN route, like immediately after playing. You kind of carved out a unique niche for yourself.
Yeah, well, first, that's extremely high praise to let the viewers believe I could have done anything I wanted with that. I mean, I graduated, brother, by like the hair of my chinny chin chin from that school that I had no business going to in the first place. So like, shout out to them for getting me into school. Yeah, it's kind of a funny story how it all worked out. Like, to make a long story short, whenever I finished up at Cornell, I had 1 year left of eligibility. And the way that conference works is if you want to use that extra year, whether it's as a senior or whatever, like you have to do it as a grad or as a undergrad student. You can't graduate and then go get your grad degree in business or X, Y, and Z topic. And so for me, it was like, man, I don't want to unenroll for a semester and try to find something to do. Like, I just want to graduate on time and I'll go walk on somewhere cool. And so a lot of my family had gone to Baylor. I had a best friend at the time that was at Baylor. So I was like, I'll go walk on there. They're kind of up and coming. At the very least, like, I'll have friends there. I'll have people there that I know. So did that for the better part of the summer and got into fall camp, and then had to medically retire before the season even started. So I'm like, I'm in Waco, Texas. I don't really want to do a graduate program and get more student debt. Like, what do I do? And was fortunate to have met the SID at the time at Baylor, Taylor Bryan, during our picture day. He was essentially asking me, hey, what do you want to do when you're done playing football? Like, what's the next thing? Probably just being nice, making conversation. But I said, I'd love to, if I could find a way to be around football in media, like college football specifically, I'd be all about that. And so I retired, and then a couple of weeks later had someone from a digital media outlet in Waco, Texas reach out to me, Colt Barber, and was like, hey, got your name from someone with Baylor football, heard you're interested in media. Do you want to come by and try like a post-game show? And I mean, Connor, I promise you, I probably wasn't good, had no idea what I was doing. We filmed it out of like a container that was a makeshift studio, but that sort of parlayed into more opportunities with that company, and got to kind of start my own YouTube channel under their umbrella. And then, I mean, how the magic of social media, and I guess, the right people saw the right clips, and I was fortunate to kind of get some reps under my belt before getting opportunity with On3. So it's wild how it's all worked. Doesn't make any sense, but definitely very, very perfectly orchestrated. And I'm fired up to get to do it now for a job.
All I heard was Baylor opened more doors for you than Cornell.
There it is. Yeah, that's the one. That's it. That's the big takeaway.
It's pretty awesome, though, because it is a good reminder that you can have experience doing X, Y, and Z. You can have all the great internships in the world and stuff like that, and media, and you could feel like all these different people. But at the very least, you need passion talking about college football. Anybody that's ever listened to you talk about this sport knows that you have that in spades. That process of like getting that jump, though, and being able to go to a place like On3, like, what was that moment that you realized, like, dude, I can do this. I can talk about this sport, and I feel very comfortable doing this.
Yeah, it's funny how it all worked out, because I think for me, the thought was always like, at some point in time, I would love to make that a reality. And because you see guys in the digital media space at that point in time kind of start to get more opportunities, like RJ Young had just signed with Fox. Josh Payton, his meteoric rise was sort of going on at this point in time while I'm trying to build this YouTube channel. And I think the advice that I would give to most people whenever I get to have different conversations with them about, hey, how do I get started with a podcast? How do I get started working in sports? The big thing I've said now for the better part of the last few years is, unless you want to be Reese Davis or Chris Fowler, like, I would steer more towards starting your own thing than I would getting into, local media or local TV. And that's not to say anything of those avenues, but it used to be like, okay, I got to get on with the local affiliate for CBS or for Fox or whoever, do the MMJ deal, eventually get into sports, maybe get seen by another market. And then it's like it used to be like a 15, 20-year track where you could maybe get a shot to work for an ESPN or whoever. Whereas now it's like, you got an iPhone, you got access to YouTube. Okay, like, hey, let's get cooking here. Let's buy a cheap mic and let's find a way to make something shake. So I I guess to answer your question more specifically, like for me, it was more so how can I build this channel I'm working on right now, and kind of grow in that regard. Because for me, I was still doing an 8 to 5 job at an office. Like I was recruiting for an in-home care company. It was great. It was paying the bills, and I was able to do this on the side a couple of times a week, going on my lunch break and go shoot some content. And so for me, it was always how can I keep getting better, building my audience, building our platform, and was really fortunate to where it came together in a again, a really random and again orchestrated way. But it was something I think I felt confident in because, like you said, we love college football. I felt like I had a good gauge for things that I was talking about, and it was always on the horizon I had hoped, but to have it become a reality was exciting for sure.
I think you and Josh do such a great job of being extremely neutral voices and being people who just, and I try and embody this as well. Like you just want to be a call it like you see it type person. You need to start like lean into the Ivy League bias, just let that come out in random moments. Like you don't really get to play around with that as much. And it kind of benefits you in that way. And that, I'm sure people, like if you say something nice about the SEC, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I'll talk about something else. Is that the one that you get the most though, where people are like, dude, talk about something else that's not just this specific conference, even though you don't have that specific affiliation to it?
Dude, it's so funny that you bring this up because I actually, before we got on air here, was working on a segment for a future show of like, how real is SEC biased? And the first part of that segment is going to be me just unpacking my background where I'm like, hey, I didn't go to an SEC school, don't have immediate family went to an SEC school. I grew up in Southern California. Like the SEC bias for me is like, it's kind of a stretch if you want to say that there's some bias there. And I think that the answer I would have to that is twofold. One is, at the end of the day, there is a supply and demand model here when it comes to our business as well as any other business. Like if I run a grocery store and Pop-Tarts are selling out, like I would be an idiot to go say, let's stock up on green beans. That's what the people want. We got to make sure they got green. When it's like, no, they're telling you they want Pop-Tarts. Make sure you give them Pop-Tarts. And so there's one aspect where it is supply and demand. And if people want to have, topics around Auburn, Tennessee, Georgia, Bama, Tech, like all the SEC schools, it's like, well, okay, we're going to try and meet that demand. The other part of it, I think, is there's an objection a little bit to like this SEC. I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but the SEC bias thought of like, well, they always get benefit of the doubt. They're always, whenever it's close, they always lean the SEC team because the logo. And it's like, well, I see the objection there, but if SEC bias and SEC conspiracy with the media is a real thing, like the NFL draft is in on it because over the course of the last 17 years, the SEC has had the most players drafted. So like gives a little validity to the eye test statement. But again, I go back to just what you were saying about, do you get tired of talking about specific teams? Not really, because I think it really is fun, as you can imagine and could attest to in your same space, like the engagement, the community, and being able to talk to people about what they care about is kind of what makes this whole thing go. So I'd love to talk more Baylor on our show. I'd love to talk more Wisconsin, but at the end of the day, it is supply and demand, and we try and meet that as best we can.